Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this Ask the Pet Food Pro Chat. This series is brought to you by Pet Food Forum and the editors of Pet Food Industry, the magazine and digital content provider with decades of providing the market with pet food expertise. You can find our content at petfoodindustry.com. Ask the Pet Food Pro presents a great opportunity to connect with industry experts and ask the questions that are most on your mind while learning information to help you and your company provide high-quality pet foods and treats. Today's chat is about automation and how to use it to improve your pet food packaging productivity. It's supported by Waldner North America, so thank you to them. And our expert today is Max Davis, General Manager of Waldner North America. Welcome, Max. Max is looking to unmute. There we go.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Debbie. I'm really excited to be here. I know we had a list of questions come in before, so we should have a good time today.
Yes, we will. So as Max mentioned, we did have some questions submitted beforehand, and we really appreciate those. We'll get to as many of those as we can. We are having everyone mute. I am muting everyone, so please enter your question that you have during the meeting today in the chat box. And finally, this chat is being recorded, so you can access recording starting in about a week at petfoodforumevents.com. Then click on the Ask the Pet Food Pro tab. Okay, so let's dive right in. I'm going to bring Max up on screen. So Max, what's a good way? Let's start by talking about packaging productivity. What's a good way to get faster throughput from your pet food packaging?
Ooh, yeah, we're starting from a good place here. So every packaging line is designed to operate at a given speed. When I go into plants and I hear they're operating at or above 85%, I know that's a plant that is really producing on a world-class level, right? Okay. And so how you achieve that is requires a ton of forethought. It really is essential that you have a well-developed maintenance program, that you have good cooperation and relationships with the manufacturers of all the equipment across the production chain. And it's especially essential that you execute on time. You know, I think many of us have had the experience where we are a little behind in production, or there's a change, be it seasonal or otherwise, in the demands for the facility. And so you push off maintenance, you push off the sorts of, you know, maybe you short your clean, inspect, lubricate cycles, and all of a sudden, instead of running at 85, you're running at 65, right? And so, well, that week you pushed off, you might have gained a little production. You're going to be down in the months or potentially years following. It's very difficult to catch back up once you get behind, because you can cause cascading failures across the equipment. Yeah.
Okay, so so the idea is you have to really plan ahead, as you said, for good forethought, plan ahead, get all your equipment and processes in a row, ducks in a row, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, it's the classic ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
It really is essential that you stay on top.
Okay, that's a great way to start. What are some of the biggest challenges in filling wet pet food in flexible containers? We know flexible containers are becoming more and more popular. So what are some of the challenges?
So the demands on the container, just because they're structurally so different from a can, are very different. So how you handle that container is a much more delicate process, right? So of course the filling, right, is essential to have clean fill. You need a clean cut point at the dosing nozzle. And the reason for that is you don't have the same margin for error for a dirty fill that you would have in a can line. It's much smaller. right?
Mhm.
If you're trying to achieve, say, 1 in 10 or 1 in 20,000 leakers, the cause of your leakers 99 times out of 100 are going to be related to clean fill. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say that that's the essential component there.
Okay. Just a side question, because we've had so many supply chain challenges everywhere in the last couple of years. What are the? I know that there's been a lot of supply chain challenges with packaging materials, especially cans. Is it a little bit better or different for the flexible containers for wet pet food?
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely different. You know, some of the supply chain issues are easier with flexible packaging, just because the volume of flexible packaging you can put in each truckload is higher. So the requirement for trucking of empty containers is much lower. So, you know, availability of trucking has been restricted in addition to everything else. However, the production of the plastic containers, aluminum containers, the lidding materials, all are under many of the same supply strain
Mm,
constraints, right? Because it's not just the raw material, it's the components for the equipment that make the container. So if a line goes down, it's as likely to go down in a can plant as an extrusion plant.
gotcha. And I'm sure, and of course, the same shipping and logistics issues would apply,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, 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 yeah. That, you know, those are a little bit eased, like I said, because,
Yes.
you know, it's something in the neighborhood of 10x the number of empty
Oh,
containers
wow.
of
Wow.
plastic that you could fit versus can.
Wow. That helps. That helps.
Yeah.
So, our industry, pet food, and also the packaging industry are known for innovation. What are some of the features on today's packaging equipment that weren't there 5 years ago that helped make things more efficient?
Yeah. So on the equipment itself, so we've been putting product in plastic cups for many years, right?
Hmm.
There are specific sort of trade secret technologies that allow one filler to operate a little better than another, you know, a rotating component in a nozzle that provides a better cut, the tolerances in the shafts being such that, you know, your dosing is really more accurate. But fundamentally, this is older technology, right?
Mm,
And it's nothing, the new has been more on the inspection side.
okay.
The newest kind of fun thing I've seen on the plant side, which isn't, or on the pouch side, which isn't as relevant to the pet food industry in North America. Mexico, it's growing quite a bit, but in the US and Canada, not so much, is an ultrasonic sealing station that's
Mm,
doing both the hermetic and the cosmetic seal in one station. Potentially allowing you to shrink the footprint of your filler and save cost on parts on an ongoing basis.
wow. Is that
Yeah.
being used in other parts of the world outside of North
So
America?
this is really brand new stuff.
Hmm.
To my knowledge, it has not been installed on a pet food filler anywhere. Uh,
Oh,
I
wow.
know I'm looking at some projects with one, but
Okay.
to my knowledge, this particular type of sealing station is fundamentally new.
Wow.
And then on the inspection side, lots of people are out there trying to incorporate camera systems to do leak detection, or you can do, you know, HVLD, high voltage leak detection. There are a lot of different technologies I've seen put to use over the years. Mostly they're pulled back off a line at a certain point because they're throwing off too many unwanted nuisance errors.
Mm,
So I would be hesitant to recommend any of those technologies for ongoing production. For spot checking, they can be very useful, especially the camera technology. can be quite useful. But as on an ongoing basis, they rarely stay online full time forever.
Okay, so not ready for prime time yet, sounds like.
That's been my experience with them so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like with the new ultrasonic sealing technology, it's a challenge maybe to people on this call. Like, hey, be the first pet food. Your company could be the first pet food facility to
Yeah,
have.
you know, this is really proven technology, which is the nice bit. I know my company, we exclusively use a company out of Germany, offices in Illinois and elsewhere, and they're the ones who developed this. And I know from their general sealing stations, they are of exceptionally high quality. And so you're really just expanding the band at which you're conducting that sealing. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let's switch gears a little bit to, we talked earlier about having your processes all lined up correctly. What's an ideal service and maintenance program for a packaging line?
Oh, we've got lots of good ones today. You know, that's really complicated to answer. I would think it should always there's a lot of confusion in the industry around service intervals, and plants very often tie them to days of production. I personally would prefer to look at hours of operation rather than just the days, because I think you'll miss your intervals at days. You'll either come in too early or too high based on your actual production levels. And so that would be, the first thing I think many companies need to address is doing a better job integrating Industry 4.0 technology to track the real hours of operation and thereby tie those into your maintenance calendar. This is all very difficult when you're talking about trying to schedule out not a week in advance, but a quarter in advance your production, because maybe it will shift by as much as a week one way or the other when you should be conducting this maintenance based on your operating hours. Fundamentally, if you are doing your regular PMs, right, you should have partners who come in your building regularly and are conducting audits. It's so essential that you have the experts in the building to really see how things are operating. It's great when they come home and they say, yeah, there wasn't anything for me to really comment on. They were doing a good job. It's usual that is the case when you've got a stable workforce and a group of people who have been running the same equipment for 10, 15, 20 years. If your labor force is starting to change more regularly, your maintenance team especially is having a higher rate of turnover, that's all going to slip, right? And if that slips, your OEE is sure to follow.
Okay, you mentioned in your answer earlier on the 4.0 industry. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So for me, what I was really talking about was the integration of real data at this filler and its ability to provide feedback as to, an example, operating cycles, operating hours on a real-time basis, so that you can make adjustments, not on a day-to-day basis, but on a minute-to-minute basis on when you need to execute what.
Okay.
Yeah.
So IoT, Internet of Things, and
yeah, I mean, having first and foremost is having the ability to keep the records and having a way to validate those logs. And then sharing them across systems is actually the less complicated portion.
Right. Yeah. Gathering data and being able to analyze it, or no matter
being able
what
to
you're
validate
doing,
it
and being able to validate.
Yeah. Being able to know that you can trust your own data is the most important thing.
Okay. Well, this talk overall is about improving productivity. What are the main challenges with that concept, with that idea?
Yeah, this all ties together, sort of the last couple of questions. For me, the biggest challenge is finding the time. I've heard said at a number of plants over the years, tons hide sins, right? And every time I've heard it, I've thought, no, they do not, right? They really do not. At the end of the day, you either produce efficiently or you do not. And where inefficient production occurs, you're producing, at best case, a loss in profit, right? And at worst case, an overall loss. And it's really essential that facilities are taking not a 1 month, 1 quarter outlook, but rather looking at the life of the equipment and looking at the lifetime OEE of the equipment, and judging their performance not in a small window, but in the bigger window of, and it's difficult because companies don't bonus people based off of their 5-year performance. They base them off of their 1-year performance, their quarterly performance. So
Right.
the incentives internal get a little twisted, especially when, most of the equipment we're talking about here should, the expected lifetime should be no less than 10 years and, in many cases, 20 plus.
Okay, so OE is operating efficiency, correct? Just for
Yeah,
in case anyone
overall equipment efficiency, yeah.
overall equipment efficiency. Okay, so you touched on several things there, and I'm assuming that besides the fact that how companies incentivize people in terms of more shorter term goals than longer term ones, I'm assuming that turnover in labor impacts that too, which everyone is
Yeah,
experiencing now too.
an operator is not an operator is not an operator. A maintenance tech is not a maintenance tech. These are all individuals, and so their skill sets are different. Their knowledge bases are different. There seems at times to be an expectation for homogeneity in the workforce that I just haven't witnessed personally. I would tend to think that, when I know when I sell a system into somewhere in the heartland of Wisconsin, that I can expect for the labor force to be of one level of experience operating in food or pet food facilities. Whereas if I sell one into, Southern Florida, the expectation is different. And it's because the people they're drawing from in, Heartland, Wisconsin, have likely had past experience working in food facilities, whereas in Southern Florida, it's unlikely.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's really a matter of, maximizing employee retention, keeping your skilled labor happy and stable. And where that does not occur, you have to have a really strong relationship with your manufacturer. You're, instead of conducting every PM yourself, you're bringing in an expert to do it for you because you don't have the belief in your capabilities to do it in-house. Right. And so now you're falling into the world of service contracts, which can be costly.
Right.
It can definitely be costly. The advantage being, it's done right, there are warranties. But the real advantage is your maintenance people are working alongside the expert. So, you can think of it a bit like a training of a surgeon, right? See one, do one. You don't want somebody just to do one because they won't know what they're looking at.
Gotcha. Yeah, a lot of it sounds like training is the foundation of it all.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
not classroom training.
No.
It's at the machine, and it's really with a wrench in your hand. It's at the HMI. It's understanding the design philosophy, the way that particular piece of equipment was engineered. And that's gained over time gradually. It's not something that happens, like I said, in a classroom overnight.
Right, right. And I'm assuming that equipment manufacturers like Waldner provide that training up front, right?
Yeah, every installation, we would assume there's maybe 1 to 2 weeks of operator training, 1 to 2 weeks of maintenance training, but then that we would need to be back in the building, at least annually, if not quarterly.
Sure, sure. And I also want to touch on you use that phrase tons hide sins. So so you actually hear, I mean, the idea is that, oh, if we're producing, if we're hitting our production volume goals, we're good.
That's been I wish I could tell you I'd only heard it at one plant, and this is it really is the god of the plant is production, right?
Sure.
And oftentimes it's production in the immediate rather than production over time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking that especially when you have all the supply chain disruptions and labor shortage, and then there's been some outages of pet food, certain pet food products at certain outlets in certain parts of the world or the country, that pressure just gets even more intense.
Absolutely.
To get product out the door, no matter what.
Yeah,
So,
no,
yeah.
it's often difficult. It's easy to be sympathetic with the people making these decisions at the plant level.
Sure.
Because if they're not making these decisions, they might be out of a job at the end of the year, right?
Yeah. Or sooner.
If they don't hit their production targets in 1-2 quarters in a row, it doesn't matter that they've set themselves up to hit their production targets every quarter for the next 5, right? Because they're being measured in that moment.
Right.
And so you have to have the right management team who understands the nature of these things.
Gotcha. This is a little bit more technical question. How can I speed up the switch between differing product lines using the same packaging system?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different technologies you could look at, right? You could have it set up doing what's called double or triple indexing, where the format plates, it will go, one format plate will be for this mouse cup, right? Fun mouse cup. One format plate will be for this snowman cup. And then the next will be for a normal square cup. And it's really, you're pulling out the magazine for one, you're putting in the magazine for the other. You might pull out the lidding magazine for one, put it in a different lidding magazine, or, in cases as extreme as what I just showed, maybe there's an extra sealing station, one for the mouse, one for the snowman. And so but again, these are all old technologies, right? So it's about building the flexibility into your equipment up front, because gaining it after the fact in many cases is not possible. Or if it is, it's very costly. It's always faster, it's always less expensive to make these changes in the factory than in your factory. Yeah, and the actual changeover between products, that's generally pretty straightforward between loaf and chunks and gravy. It's all done in the same hopper, the same dosing station. There's not any mechanical changes that will need to be made on the packaging equipment up front, other than to handle the packaging itself.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're not able to change over from one presentation, one format to another in less than half an hour, you should re-examine your processes, because that isn't meeting what my expectations would be.
Okay. Okay. Getting to some of those fun shapes you were showing, I'm assuming that those are just becoming more prolific, or have you seen this more of a standardization?
I wish. I would love to see some more innovation on the packaging side. I feel as though the North American audience has been pretty staid. There's been a shift to flexible packaging. There's been a shift to split cup formats.
Right.
But it's relative to what you see elsewhere in the world. It really is, it's very staged. You know, this mouse, which is a real challenge to automate downstream in the case packing section. But this mouse is a cup that was 15 years ago in Europe, right?
Wow.
You know, I've just other examples I have on my desk right now. This is what's called a stand cap pouch. A stand cap pouch, right, for a little gravy, a little topper on
Hmm.
product would be a very interesting introduction to the marketplace. And it's one that we've seen elsewhere in the world, but not in North America yet.
Hmm.
And you know, there may be some advantages, disadvantages therein, but I think it comes down to consumer preference. And ultimately, I would love to see some more innovation there, but if the sales haven't justified it, then they haven't justified it.
Hmm. Interesting. I was going to ask you why, if you had a thought as to why that was, but um, interesting that you would think, you know, in America where we pride ourselves on being, you know, like, ooh, you know, top on the trends and all that, it's like, no, not really when it comes to packaging shapes, apparently.
Yeah, elsewhere in the world, different packaging shapes and sizes drive more of a premium price.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have not seen that tested to any great extent in the North American marketplace.
Interesting. Do you think that might be tied to the fact that it's for wet food and wet food tends to be more expensive anyway, and so you may have more value shoppers in a large market like the United States, or
You know, for sure, yes. But then when I look at just a price per ounce,
Mhm.
right, of what are essentially the same product formulations, you know, for a can versus a cup, the cup, which you would think would be less expensive, drives a premium price, right? You can ship 10 times as many empty cups. The cost to store those are thus 10 times less for the factory. The handling costs are going to be somewhat higher because it's a more delicate container, but overall, it should be less expensive. But in the North American marketplace, they absolutely drive a per ounce price premium.
Hmm. Interesting. Very interesting. Any other, this is kind of a tangent question too, but any other like consumer trends that you see influencing things like packaging, yeah, or you know, have it sounds like the North American preference for the more standardized packaging that was pre-pandemic, that wasn't affected by the pandemic or any of the supply chain disruptions.
Yeah, I think that at this point, there is just a ton of impetus put on manufacturers to get product on shelf.
Hmm.
You know, it's still when I go to my local grocery store, shout out Giant Eagle. When I go to Giant Eagle, their shelves are not full,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
This was something pre-pandemic I essentially never saw,
right,
right?
right,
And this holds true at other grocery stores. I make a point anytime I'm going to a new region, traveling for work, US, Europe, elsewhere. I am going to at least one grocery store.
sure.
And across the world, this is pretty much held true. So I think the space for innovation is smaller now because the drive towards filling the shelves is not being met. You know,
Makes sense.
so the resources really have to be directed towards increasing current production, and it's tougher to put them into new formats, for instance. You know,
Yeah.
formulation changes are easy, format changes are much harder.
You know, I would say that even that with all the supply chain issues, that even formulation changes have become more of a challenge. I mean, I've not personally been to any of the big trade shows here in the United States this year, but my colleagues who have and other people have said they haven't seen quite the level of new product development you usually see at those shows, new
Yeah,
product launches, and maybe that's why is that companies are reluctant to launch a lot of new products when they're not sure if they can get the ingredients, for example, or the packaging materials, or what
Yeah,
have you,
I was at the recent one in Las Vegas.
to preserve. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been in previous years, and you saw some new product launches, not that many, but some related more towards, smart water and food bowls. And but as far as there was really very limited what you saw as far as pet food.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've heard. I was at Interzoo this year, which had a fair number of new product launches. Nothing I would say truly new. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that was just pent up because there hadn't been an Interzoo for 4 years. So, or big international pet trade show, really. Just a reminder, folks, that, please enter your questions in the chat box if you have any for Max. And we kind of have already touched on this next question that we do have. What is important for the product development team to consider in factory automation in terms of packaging shapes and sizes?
Yeah, that's a good one. I can bring my mouse out again, right? So when handling a container, right, this was very easy, right? It sits in a stack of them, right, like this. It comes out of the box, it sits nicely, it goes into your magazine very nicely, it's filled, everything is easy. Having your ceiling head that shape is not an issue. All very easy. Where the challenges then come in are down the line, right? How do you case pack something with such an irregular shape without leaving too much space in the boxes? This is especially important when we're talking about e-commerce distribution channels, where there isn't the same requirement on the case for graphical design, and it's really much more about getting them efficiently out your door to the customer. But once they're out of the box, now your package design becomes equally important as ever. So figuring out how to handle different shapes and sizes are a real challenge. The pouch I mentioned before, right? So the pouch comes in, it either comes on a rail, right? Sits on a rail, gets opened up at the filler, filled, sealed, etc. Right? Shipping things on rails like that, where it's maybe 15 per rail and you're switching them out every minute, is a real challenge, right? So what you would rather do is have it in a magazine. But once you have brought into something like this, your spacing between the pouches, right? You'll start to curl up and around very quickly as you stack these pouches. And then they won't destack the same. And so you'll create inefficiencies in your production process by failing to consider how they would automate down the line. If all you're looking to produce is 10 or 15 a minute, that's not a problem. When you're trying to produce 100, 200, 300 a minute, right now your demands on labor supply are significantly increased. So it's important when looking at new packaging formats, you consider not just how they look on the store shelf, but how they will actually operate in your facilities.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe that goes back to the question of the lack of innovation in packaging sizes. Is that as you said, people are trying to get product out the door, so maybe it's just too much to handle in that context.
Yeah, maybe. You have to have a real belief in price premium of the product coming out the back end. Absolutely.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about these flexible packages and all the fun shapes and stuff. What are the challenges, or how do they differ from rigid packaging, say, cans, to flexible packaging? What are the different challenges of the two kinds?
Yeah, so cans you can run at a much higher rate because of its rigidity, its strength of the container can absorb the forces imparted by those speeds, those velocities. A high-speed can line might run at 800 plus a minute, right?
Mm.
There are no single production lines for cups that approach those speeds. They're, you know, 480 would be about where they would max out.
Mm.
You know, and that's a big 12-lane machine running at 40 cycles a minute. And it's really about how they get handled, right? It's, you know, continuous sterilization exists for both cups and cans, but is more common with cans.
Right.
And so you don't have to handle them the same way, right? So if you think your cup, your mouse comes through your filler, gets filled, gets sealed, and then has to get picked out of your filler, out of the carrier plate, and placed in a retort tray,
Right.
right? And in a cup, in a can rather, you're just shoving them. You're forming your pattern, you're shoving them onto your crate, you're putting another layer, bang, 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 all the way through. You cannot do that with a cup. You have to pick them up via vacuum gripper usually, and then gently place them in the tray, and then stack another tray on top of the first one and gently place another round. And so your ability to run at high speeds is very different. And the demand of the precision for your equipment is higher.
That makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
You know, the
So
weights
it's,
of the stacks are much lower, but
yeah. So it slows down the retort process too, then, it sounds like.
I don't actually believe that's true. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it doesn't, but it does slow down your production process. So
Oh,
it
overall,
functionally
right.
it's the same.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
This is another side question. I don't know if you know, but are there special retort machines that are safer? I mean, I know that they have to get to a certain temperature to in order to sterilize the content. So, is there a limit to that with flexible packaging so they don't melt in the retort?
You would never get close to that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you would never get, because so like the plastic, the heat sealing station, I don't remember the exact temperature right now, but it's somewhere 500-ish degrees, right? And a retort is fundamentally a hot water cooker,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not you know, at that point, 500 degrees, it would be, uh, I don't know what temperature water converts to plasma, but it's some, you know, under the right pressure and temperature, you know, 500 might do it, right?
With 500 degrees Fahrenheit, you probably would not have pet food coming out. It would be
You're
something
not,
completely
yeah,
different.
it would be very difficult to get water to that temperature.
Funny.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that before. It just kind of entered my head of like, I wonder if that's an issue with because it's plastic versus metal. But yeah, sounds like
No,
not.
you know, there are on the human food side people who have more anxiety around these things. You know, you've probably seen, I know as a father of young children, I hear a lot about BPA free plastics, right?
Right,
Water bottles and things, right?
right,
I, I'm not an oncologist. I don't know anything about those sorts of things, but I would think if it exists on one, it certainly exists on the other as well.
right, right. Yeah, and that could be probably a whole nother discussion in terms of,
You have to
packaging
have a different
materials.
pet food pro. You know,
Yeah,
it would be, maybe a
exactly.
veterinarian would come in and talk. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is an issue with consumers, and I kind of touched on this earlier, and we kind of veered off. But I mean, are there any other consumer trends or differences in consumer trends from different parts of the world that you see that affect packaging?
Yeah, you know, I would say the two that I've looked at are the humanization, right? Of, you know, okay, not the packaging as much as the presentation of the packaging, and then premiumization. And I think actually the second there is maybe going to take a step back, given the current economic climate.
Sure.
But where, you know, I have in the last couple of years started to see more dog foods labeled as organic. I've started to see more products that are calling out the quality of their ingredients specifically, right?
Mhm.
And with that goes your presentation of it. You know, it's very much the case that you have to be conscious of discoloration that can occur at the top of the product, right?
Right.
So that's one of the things that you really avoid. You know, there are a couple of tricks, right? You would flip the cup, would be kind of the big one. You would have maybe a gas flush to remove the residual oxygen in the headspace. You know, you see targets 2, 3, 4, 4.5% residual O2 would be a reasonable sets of targets in the pet food industry.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's another technical question. So, what kinds of sensors do you see that can detect moisture and control process temperature in drying stages and help product consistency? So, this things like the examples the person gives are like NIR, Raman, UV, visible.
Yeah, you know, I'm actually not super familiar with those.
Okay.
You know, for me, my experience is all after your kitchen, right? So my expectation is that the product delivered to the filler fits within the window of the product specifications we've gone over. You know, a little wetter, a little drier, okay, but you get outside of a certain realm and it doesn't work anymore. So that to me isn't something so much handled in real time as handled via QA/QC process during your batch cooking phase.
Right. So it's up the line from the packaging. In other words,
Exactly.
right. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly moisture readings.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Probably another to the person that said we probably will need to do another Ask the Pet Food Pro more on production up the line. Well, we've also touched a little bit on this, but what future trends do you think we can expect in pet food packaging or pet food packaging equipment?
Yeah, I expect you know, I expect there to be not the most development in packaging formats, but I do expect people to look to produce higher quantities of selected formats. Right.
Mhm.
I think that we are entering into a phase in which, you know, the shelves won't have 20 different types of presentations on them, but they will be full again.
Right.
So there will be a real premium placed on, can you get these 1 or 2 packaging formats out and on the shelves on time, right?
Mhm.
And
Okay.
that's really what I think. You know, coming from the human food sector, I think you will continue to see the call out of the ingredients, right? I think you will continue to see, you know, pets referred to as family members and marketed to as though they were your, you know, smallest child. And I do not think you will see a real change in the packaging.
Okay. Someone's asking if you can expand on that. So do you mean uh, in terms of the type of packaging, you know, recycled packaging, paper packaging, or do you just
Yeah,
mean in the variety of?
I have maybe inappropriately strong feelings about the recycling industry in the United States. I don't think even cans are especially recyclable and environmentally efficient way, right? Just because the shipping costs that go into the cans. I would rather see less energy intensive packaging formats, whether they're recyclable or not. But when you're talking about marketing, right, that's not what you're looking for. So yes, you absolutely are seeing attempts to make, especially, so the plastic cups generally recyclable, the aluminum trays generally recyclable. You need to clean them out first, but they are generally recyclable. The cans, of course, generally recyclable. So what we're talking about are the lidding material. The lidding
Mm,
material is not generally recyclable. I don't see there being much consumer awareness of that.
No, because I did not know that, and I try to recycle responsibly as much as I can.
Yep. Everybody, look, my wife used to be a yoga instructor. There's lots of crunchy things in my home. And certainly recycling is one of them that we are pretty strict about. And it's absolutely essential that we do a good job here. But what's being sold to people is not that, right? It's okay if you're talking about pouches, right? Then yeah, there's a little more monomaterial. Retortable pouches are pretty new in the market. You see them sometimes. I haven't noticed any in a North American supermarket for pet food. Right, every pouch I've seen has been the aluminized type that is not recyclable. Most people aren't aware they're not recyclable, but they are not.
Right.
Yeah, so I have seen that on the human food side. I have not seen that on the pet food side yet. And I think the driver there is the pet food market, wet pet food market for pouches is pretty limited at this point.
Yeah. And I think, you said that you have a maybe controversial opinion. I really don't think you do, because I think there are efforts out there, especially because it's, dry pet food is so much in the market, and generally plastic bags that are not recyclable because they're multi-material are used. And I mean, there are some efforts out there, like the Pet Sustainability Coalition has a pilot program to try to get people to, return their pet food bags to the store, and then they're working with different entities to recycle that. And it's a huge they'll acknowledge it's a huge project. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. So
yeah, I mean, I know growing up, I didn't understand that, again, Giant Eagle, the blue grocery bags were not recyclable, right? I just assumed you threw them in the recycling bin with everything else. And it was only later when I watched a woman drop off a big amount of bags into some kind of weird bin at the grocery store that I realized, oh, I've been doing this wrong the whole time.
Yeah. Consumer awareness is really an issue too. Just one more back to the future of pet food packaging, and knowing that you do a lot in the human food side too. Is there something in consumer product goods on that side, or outside of food, that you see coming to pet food packaging? I mean, you mentioned the mono pouches. I mean, do you see anything else that could come to pet food packaging, or might in the near future?
That's a good question. A lot of it is already out there, right? You see cups delivered with overcaps, right? Overcaps came first from human food, obviously, right? And that's so you can put it back in your fridge with a nice cap on it. You see, I would say, for the older packaging formats, cups and cans, right? The innovations come very slowly. In my lifetime was the pool tab, easy open tab on cans became much more common. Maybe it predated me, but I don't think so. I'm almost 40. And in my lifetime came the overcap, right? Came these sort of innovations. I do not anticipate any great innovations there. Where I think you'll see more are on the pouch side of things, right? This is kind of a novel cap. There are other novel caps out there. I've seen some attempts, though not in the retort business, for resealable cans, not an actual can topper, a plastic one, but an integrated metal one that comes with the can. So you unscrew it, scoop out some pet food, put it in the bowl, rescrew it. I have not seen this done in the pet food market. I have seen this done with human food.
Interesting.
And especially I've seen this done with beverages.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow. Well, maybe someday in pet food, maybe.
We'll see. It would be okay. And anything innovative, I think, is fun, and I enjoy greatly.
Great. Anything else? I think we're kind of gone through a lot of the questions. Anything else you wanted to make sure people knew about automation in pet food packaging? Putting you on the spot here, but yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Max. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and thank you again to Waldner for your support. We really appreciate it. Just a reminder to folks that we do have a feedback survey that we will send via email, or you can just take a snapshot of the screen of the QR code here on the screen. Also a reminder, we will have Pet Food Forum coming up next May 2nd, 1st through 3rd in Kansas City. And you can hear a lot of other experts like Max share their knowledge on different topics. And then finally, just another reminder that the recording of the chat will be available in about a week on petfoodforumevents.com under the Ask the Pro tab. Thank you all again for your participation, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, Debbie, and thanks to everybody who submitted questions. They were a lot of fun.
Yes, thanks. Bye-bye.